I'm in Central Park decompressing after a long day of sessions. I have a couple of clients right now I'm working with. They're parents of a couple of children, and they're struggling with trying to understand why their children are gravitating towards the more abusive parent. Not them, but their partner. And the reason is safety. If you are not an abusive parent, if you allow that children to take care of themselves, to have their own feelings, to be their own person, to not guilt and shame them into becoming who you need them to be so that you feel better about themselves, that kid's going to learn early on that they don't need to take care of your feelings, that it's not their responsibility. They can be whoever they need to be, and it's okay. Now, with the abusive parent who guilts them, shames them, doesn't allow them to challenge them, doesn't allow them to have their sadness, their hurt, their pain, that guilts them and shames them into becoming who they need them to be so that the parent feels better about themselves, the kid's never going to feel safe outside of that parent. They're going to gravitate towards it and stay very close to that parent out of safety. I remember when I was a kid and I would go out and play, I was never present while I was out playing because I was always worried about what I was going to walk into when I got home. But when I stayed home, I got to watch and pay attention to the tone in the voice, to the attitude for when the nervous system started to ratchet up. So I didn't really have a life because my life was about safety. And I gravitated towards my more abusive parent just to stay safe. If I can please them and make them happy with me, then the beatings were less, the shaming was less, the humiliation was less. Where the less abusive parent, I got to be whoever I wanted to be and they didn't give a shit. So if you have a kid that's gravitating towards the more abusive parent and you're taking it personally, you kind of did your job. Because you're not putting fear into this child to self-abandon, to show up for you. So it is their safety that relies on aligning with the more abusive parent. They fucking hate it and they resent it on a deep level, whether they know it or not, and they butt heads. And there's so much anger underneath the surface, but they don't feel safe to leave because they don't know who they are without that parent, because that parent made them extremely dependent on them. The child is so dependent on them that they can't break away because they're terrified of it. And they can't confide in the less abusive parent because that would be betraying the more abusive parent. Do you see the bind? You see how they're stuck? You can't take it personally. You did the job. You took the high ground. You didn't guilt and shame that kid to take care of your feelings. Just let them be angry. Let them be whatever they need to be. And the hope is that they're going to grow up emotionally at some point, realize that they were brainwashed and taken emotionally hostage. And they're going to hopefully break away and realize, because on some level, they already know that you're the better parent. But they can't admit it because it's just going to break the lie that they've been living. And that's too much for them to bear. And it's too much to go against the more abusive parent because they're afraid of the repercussions.